Go.
Today we're going to make a little ribbon candy ornament out of fabric. So supplies we'll need for today's project is a 1/4 inch foot. I'm also going to use an edge joining foot to help me do some top stitch, some hand sewing needles, some beads, and 2 pieces of 2" by 18" Christmas fabric. Let's get started. I've gotten my 2 fabrics right sides together, and I'm simply going to sew 1/4 inch down each long outside edge. Now that we have that done, we're going to turn this tube right side out and move on to the fun stuff. I'm going to use the bodkin to help me turn my tube right side out. So I'm just going to put a little edge in the end of it there. I'm sliding a ring down onto it, and I'm just going to use the bodkin to slide to the other end of the tube, turning the fabric right side out as I go. This is a handy little gadget for putting elastic in pants. That's where I use it most often, but it's got lots of purposes in my sewing room. Here we go. And this is a good place you can see how I squeeze that ring down onto it to grasp the 2 layers of the fabric, and that's what let me get it turned. There we go. Now we're going to give this a press and put our beads on. Just takes a little bit of time to work your seams out to the edge, pressing as you go. It does better if you work in very small sections to do this part. Don't try to do the whole length at one time. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm going to turn both of my ends in to close this up and give myself a nice, clean, finished edge. Just turned it down about a 1/2 inch. Got one little piece right there that doesn't want to tuck in pretty. Set that with a steam or a little bit of press. You could just put your beads into it and turn it into ribbon candy at this point, but I feel like if I go back and I do some top stitching right along the edge, it gives it a little bit more structure. And just gives me a little bit more of a finished look to my ornament. I'm going to switch to my edge joining foot. This is one of my favorite feet. I use this little guide here in the middle of the foot, right up against the edge of my strip, and I'm going to scoot my needle position over just a little bit to the left, and it's going to keep my top stitching nice and even. So I've just shifted my needle position over about 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to stitch right across the end as well, closing up where I made that fabric turn in. And then we're going to go right down the other side. I have choices for doing this top stitch. I'm also going to show you how to use the bi-level foot. The bottom of the foot is beveled. This raised edge right here is going to ride right along the edge of my fabric and going to help give us a nice stitch. So I'm going to show you how this one works. Minimum effort on my part. There we go. So I'm using yellow thread so you guys can see how this works, but I've tied a knot around one bead to create a stopper, and then I've added another bead. So I'm going to start with coming up in my first dot on my fabric and pull so it catches, and then I'm going to add another bead. I'm going to add a bead in between each layer. So I've got a bead, and then I'm going to go down in my next dot. I'm going to add another bead. You could use whatever size or color beads that you wanted to. So here I've got 2 so far. And the beads just act as a little bit of a spacer. This would be a great project for littles. Practice some hand sewing, fine motor skills. You could use whatever color beads. You could put more than one bead in between your layers if you chose to. This is definitely an opportunity to get creative. So you can see how it's starting to take shape.
Cool.
And I'm just using those dots we drew as my guide for where I come up and go down each time. Okay, now that we're up here at the top, I'm gonna put a couple extra beads in my top here, and then we're gonna come back through just a little bit and create a knot to tie it all off. I think I'm gonna do 4. Sounds like a good number.
Cool. Fun.
I'm just going to tie this off. My layers to space out just a little bit. There you go, a ribbon candy ornament.
Yay!